or, and it is important that the principals and the teachers, even the school level information, they don't necessarily take the time to absorb it and say, okay, how are our kids doing? Where do we need to go? How can we do things differently? And how that might impact the day-to-day instruction in the classroom. And even the teachers are, I have to say this, they will come for 4 years and they'll go back to their own countries, or they'll come for 6 years and they go back, because not many citizens are teachers. Mostly citizens are principals and they are in positions of leadership and management. But the teachers who are actually teaching the kids, they are not always citizens. There is a mix of citizens and expats who are actually doing the teaching and learning. So we do need to have more evidence-based data like this to inform the Education 2030, you know, the big goals, a very ambitious agenda that these countries have agreed and committed to within the framework of Sustainable Development Goals. But we also need strategies for analyzing and utilizing the data and monitoring results. So a lot of data is gathered, but it's not used. And there are implications for curriculum review in mathematics, science, reading and literacy, because the teachers are not necessarily so like Qatar, while we were there, they were undergoing a curriculum reform. They were updating their curriculum according to their new emerging needs, because some of the curriculum in these countries was decided 20 years ago, and it's not always, or 10 years ago, and it's not always up to date. And I believe this, for me, is one of the most important implications. They need to have more investments in teacher trainings for maths, for science. Reading and literacy is still all right, but for maths and science, if these kids want to become tomorrow engineers or go into working on, you know, in different research or open up other fields, the teachers really need to be up to date. And there was a disconnect. I felt the teachers were often educated in education systems that were of the past, and these are kids of the future, because these kids have access to new information technologies, they have access to a lot of resources, and these countries are really looking ahead. These are countries that have emerged as new, you know, they are going rapid social transformations, and they really are very ambitious in how they want to move forward. And the education system is not necessarily ready for kids of tomorrow, and the teachers cannot give them those skills. So there needs to be the school-based teacher training for these kids, where these teachers are actually able to you know, be more current in their teaching methods, and also for critical thinking and analytical skills, because often you know, while the kids are doing well, but analysis and critical thinking is an area that needs further work. And we will have to consider differentiated approaches for male and female schools, because girls are doing rather well, girls are performing at a higher level, and boys have a huge attitude issue. I mean, boys are really, I mean, I was in a class, I was with this very prestigious lady from the World Bank. We were visiting one of the classrooms, and this little kid, we gave him a test to perform, and he said, ha! And you know, he just ripped the test and he threw the paper. There was absolutely no, you know, respect for the adults, or that, you know, if there are visitors or guests and you're giving a test. I mean, so boys are, and so the teachers have a lot of strategies. Like in a 40-minute class, they'll let the boys go out and run after 15 minutes. They'll go out, they'll run around the courtyard, come back, and then resume their lesson. So the teachers are trying different, you know, strategies to let them expend their energy and come back and then focus. But it's and they don't. The girls are better at this, but the boys they don't look at the teachers as role models, because they see their fathers in a very different role at home, and all the elders in their community that they respect, they see them in a very different role. And then the teachers are coming from another country, and they are there, and they know that there will be a spillover and the teacher will be gone after a few years. There are different, you know, whatever the reasons in a child's thinking, but they don't respect that sometimes there are issues. And teachers are they say they don't feel respected by the kids in the boys' schools. So I just moved, and this is something that we didn't look at, but we do need to create linkages with health services for education and to address issues such as child obesity, diabetes, and learners' health and well-being. Because a lot of these kids are quite overweight, and they do have diabetes and issues. And if a child is not feeling well, how are they going to learn properly? They are often away from school, they are not coming regularly to school. So I think there needs to be more of a health services need to come, and there need to be better linkages with learners' needs. So maybe I'll just skip to the last, yeah. We can just leave that one. This just gives you it's just a summary of the findings. But I'm going to stop here, and it would be great to have an exchange and have some questions. And yes, maybe Mark, would you like to facilitate?
Let me help you choose the questioners.
Yes. Do you need this?
Okay, so thank you very, very much. A couple people on the row, so you don't have to keep raising your hand. So we're going to do the lady here and the man behind her, and then those two people over there. So cut out.
Do you have any way of determining how much of the problem in academic performance is attributable to the difference in language between the school and the home? You mentioned that the classroom language of the school is different from what the children have been brought up to their home, and what they hear while they're in school.
So the question is, can we attribute some of the learning challenges to the differences in the language at home and at school? Is that correct? So we didn't focus on language per se for this study, but we did conduct interviews, and we did meet with teachers and educators, and yes, this is an issue, especially because the slang, or I don't know, it's Fussa. Fussa is the classic Arabic, correct?
Standard.
Standard.
Standard, which is the language of
Hi, Shari.
Hi. As a university studies major, I had 4 years in Arabic, and I spent time living in the Arab world. The standard Arabic is the language of television, of news broadcasts.
Yeah.
And actually, some of the languages, for instance, the Arabic spoken in Saudi Arabia, is quite a bit closer to standard Arabic than, say, the Arabic spoken in Egypt.
Yeah.
So yes, there's a dialect issue. You have a teacher from Egypt or a teacher from Jordan, a slight dialect issue. But children who hear television at home are going to hear standard Arabic.
So there is a standard Arabic, which is like
There's one Fusha.
the Fussa. That was the word I was looking for, Fussa.
It's like listening to Walter Cronkite giving the news. Then there are many.
And what they speak at home in the Emirates or in Jordan or in Egypt is different.
But some of the countries, their Amiya, their colloquial Arabic is much closer to standard Arabic.
But not in the Gulf states. In Saudi Arabia, it's big. So there it is closer, and they're also close. But it is an issue for the kids. It is an issue for the kids. And the other thing is, a lot of these kids are also. Thank you so much, Shari. That was really helpful. You elaborated the issue of the language and the differences at home and the standard Arabic. But then in addition to this, another overlay is a lot of the kids that I was meeting, they speak English. They don't want to speak Arabic, they don't want to learn Arabic. And at the same time, the schools now want the lessons to be carried out in Arabic. So that is also another complexity. It's the standard Arabic, what they speak at home, and then English as a language which the kids prefer to speak and use. Yes. Yes.
I'm going to walk around with this. And you use the mic there. Okay, so let's see, you were next, Jen. Remember your question? Okay. There were two questions over here, which
now, this might require a complete separate lecture, but it's very closely related. I'm interested if such studies, parallel studies, were done among the Arab populations in the West Bank in Israel, within Israel, the Arab populations within Israel, and in Gaza, the Arab populations. Have such studies been done with them? And I don't know if you can handle the answer in 5 minutes, but...
No, I can answer very briefly. Have similar studies been done in other countries? Yes, the Global Education Monitoring Report, as well as the World Bank, as well as UNESCO, UNICEF. Maybe the questions are not necessarily exactly the same questions, but they are looking at learning and improving quality and how they can actually strengthen the education system. So yes, there are studies that are available. I did not conduct them, but they are out there.
Thank you for a lovely talk, very educational and interesting. Many of the summary results of your talk apply, it seems to me, very beautifully to American schools as well, for example. Critical thinking, all the issues that have to do with those kinds of things. So looking at your list, I was very impressed that it corresponds to lists of the kinds of things that we need to do here in the United States. If I set aside the gender issue and perhaps the language issue, are there other things that we should be paying attention to specifically?
Are there other areas that we should be paying attention to? I think investing in teacher education is critical because teachers really need to be up to speed. Also, we need to look at, are we investing where quality matters? Because it's one thing to spend a lot of money and to pump money into the education system, but if those areas are not key drivers for quality, we won't improve learning outcomes. And then curriculum is having curriculum that is responsive to today's emerging needs and where these countries want to go tomorrow. So aligning the curriculum. And one area which for me is very important and which I didn't mention over there is teaching kids about citizenship education and teaching them values and skills and attitudes that they need to really participate in decision making, to become active members of the community so that they can make a difference when they grow up.
If you control for I'm intrigued by your finding that girls consistently outperform boys. If you control for socioeconomic status between boys and girls, do girls still come out on top? And does your data give a clue as to why that is so?
Yes. So when we do control for socioeconomic status, your question is when we control for socioeconomic status, do girls still outperform boys? And yes, and I showed a slide where you see there's a significant difference between girls' performance and boys' performance, and even amongst the lowest quintiles and the higher quintiles as well. So one of the explanations is the girls' schools there's obviously, they're not in co-educational settings. So it's clear there's something happening in the girls' schools that is different to what is happening in the boys' school. So we are clear about that. Now what is it that is happening in the girls' school? They are conducting more studies to look more deeply at those issues. But we came up with, the marked differences are significant. And some of the explanatory factors were the boys' attitudinal issues, and also, even though the girls' schools have teachers that are coming in from outside, the girls are more respectful towards them. They accept them more readily. And my personal observation, one of my personal observations was, the girls, they sit in the class and they will do. You give them the classwork. We observed a lot of classes. They'll sit and they'll do the work. They'll talk, they'll chat in between, but they will come up with something. But the boys were really running in the lower grade levels, and even in the higher grade levels, the boys, getting them to actually sit was very challenging. And one of the education ministry people said that they do have cushioned jobs. The boys, they know that when they graduate, they will get a very good job, because there aren't many citizens. And the countries, the Gulf states, they want their citizens to be in leadership positions. They want the citizens to manage big programs. And they don't mind then getting in expats to do the groundwork. So these kids, they know that when they graduate, they will end up with a very nice job. On the other hand, girls, and this came out in the interviews with the educators, the girls, they are using education as a lever for participation in public life. So parents don't mind if they go to university, they'll fund them. They might be more conservative in some areas, but when it comes to having a higher education, parents want their girls, they'll support them, they'll send them abroad even. So girls are using education as a lever to participate more actively in public life, and so they're taking that opportunity to step out. We don't want to get married, they might say, you want to have travel, go and study abroad, and parents, if it's for education, parents are very supportive. So there are different reasons. I can't make any generalizations, but these are issues that came up in the interviews.
We noticed in the United States that both fundamentalist and orthodox religious schools have lower performance levels on standardized testing for particularly math and science areas. I wonder, and the hypothesis, of course, is that religion is taking up a great deal of the curriculum. Is this a factor in the schools that you have studied? And the second question, which relates culturally to that sort of thing, is do boys do better with male teachers as opposed to female teachers?
So the first question, let me answer first the second question. The girls' schools have girls, female teachers, and the boys' schools have male teachers. So maybe in the early grades, in the boys' schools, there are females who are going in, but otherwise even the teachers are segregated. So that issue is not such a big factor. And most of the schools, the independent schools, they are secular. So I didn't go to any of the religious institutions. We were using the independent, the government schools, and they were the ones that were included in the sample. So I didn't go to any religious institutions. So I guess that would be a limitation of the study, but we wanted to focus on the public school system, and those are secular. Yes?
Could it be, this is a religious schools as well? And could there be a bias against Western learning? I'll put quotes around Western learning as opposed to what the Quran might teach?
In the Gulf states, I don't want to make any statements like that, but there is, generally speaking, there is no bias against Western education, and most parents would even send their kids to the French school or the American school, especially the elite, because these schools are pretty expensive. Because if they send their kid to the public school, they don't pay anything, it's for free. Otherwise, they do maybe get some subsidies from the government. But parents want to send their kids, at least the more educated families, they want to send their kids to the French, the British, the American schools, because they want the kids to go abroad and study, especially boys. But there are some madrasas that are there and schools that are religious, and they are. I know more of boys that are going there, but those are also to become members of the clergy, or they become imams afterwards. So they need to also learn about religious education. So they need to then take on those positions in their. I didn't see any. But most of the kids are going either to the public school system or these elite, Western schools actually. But there are madrasas there, and you can send your kid to a religious school, and often those are quite subsidized, because then those kids eventually then go to the mosque, or they go and work in the I don't know what the word is, but the religious system, they need to be there as scholars or as imams.
You haven't mentioned Iran, and I think for good reason, and I don't know what it's been like since the revolution, but before the revolution, at the younger grades, the bright kids, mostly boys I think, were separated, or not so much separated as were isolated, taught English, and increasingly much of the teaching was in English, to the point where the brightest would go to a purely English-speaking school, what was then called the Pahlavi University in Shiraz, and were taught in English to a great extent by British and American teachers. So this is very interesting compared to what was going on. And of course one hasn't spoken about Israel either.
Obviously I'm not looking at Iran today, but a lot of the kids here are also, the parents are sending the kids to schools that are where they are British, where they receive British and American education in English, and actually this is an issue. It's not just a disconnect between Arabic, but also kids are speaking more and more. They're speaking English. They want to, and parents want their children to learn English. And some of the kids that I met, they're totally local. They won't even speak Arabic properly. So this is an issue. That is absolutely an issue.
We are getting late. I'm going to take just a couple more questions. And I see one here, two. I see only two questions. Wait, because the questions have been really good. All right, we're going to do the young lady back here, and then the old man up here.
Thank you for your talk. This is a half question, half comment. I've been evaluating schools in the UAE for a dozen years and have spent a lot of time in schools. This is a half question and a half comment. I have been evaluating schools in the UAE for a dozen years. I've spent a lot of time in schools. And your comments about boys and their attitudes and versus girls' responses to school and to pedagogy. I'm wondering if it's deeper than attitudes and more about the teaching methods that are used, which are typically very hierarchical teachers in the front of the room, which boys don't respond to. And the finding and recommendation for teacher training to teach teachers how to engage kids in more active learning and more teaching for understanding and collaborative learning would go a long way toward fixing the differences between how well boys and girls achieve.
What a fabulous question from an educator who's actually worked in one of these countries. So thank you for sharing your insights. And I totally concur with what you say. I'm only repeating what came up in the interviews and the reasons that were given to me as part of the research study and pertaining to the attitudes. But I fully concur with you. The teachers need the training, and one of the things was motivating the kids. How can you motivate these kids? And I'm sure if the teachers were more engaging, they're trying different strategies, and they need to find the key. That what would be the strategies that would work to engage the kids and keep them motivated and engaged. But you're absolutely spot on. I fully concur with your comments and observation.
To what extent is education compulsory in the Arab states, and up to what level is it compulsory?
I can't speak for all the Arab states because in some countries it was, the idea was universal primary education, which was in some cases up to the 6th grade, which is compulsory up to the 6th grade initially. Then it became up to basic education level in some countries because there are different systems. So the equivalent of a 6th grade in some countries, in other countries the equivalent of the 9th grade. But now under the mandate which these countries have now, they need to finish the 12th grades in the Gulf states. Previously they were opting for universal primary education, which was compulsory up till grade 6, and in some countries up to grade 9. But under the new mandate, which is a renewed vision under the Sustainable Development Goal 4 mandate, they want the kids to complete all the way up to 12th grade, and then also continue on to higher education. Higher education is not compulsory, but schooling it is now up to 12th grade, I believe. I can check on this. If I really want to give you I know till the 9th grade it was, and I know the goal is to go to make it compulsory up to 12th grade. I don't know if it's become operational yet or not, but that's the way we are going, up to 12th grade.
So I want to this is not a question, but an address to the audience. And I wanted to make a few comments, really one specific. Some of you are recording this talk, and I asked Dr. Khan whether that was acceptable to her, and she said that it was. But for the future, kindly be sure that you have either asked me or one of the steering committee members if that's acceptable, and we will turn that over to the speaker. So please let us know before you record. The other comment I want to make is that we have Dr. John Densler to thank for these mobile mics. He called me, we spoke about a week ago, and he said, I'm an MIT electrical engineer, and I can help you with the speaker system, so it couldn't be better. So thank you, John.
Just one last comment before I let us all thank Faryal together. The question period was really good, and so I want to thank all of you for making this an even better lecture. Now, Faryal, thank you very much for leading us through this, and thank you very much.
Today's the 28th, yes.
Identify